The whiskey-soaked laughter of the Silver Spur Saloon cut through the evening air like broken glass, and Victoria Sanders knew every cruel word was meant for her. She stood at the edge of Nevada City's main street in the fading gold light of an 1872 summer evening, her fingers tight around the leather strap of her worn carpetbag, listening to the men inside mock her belief that people could change. The California gold rush had long since faded, leaving behind a town full of hardened souls who believed redemption was a fairy tale told by foolish women. Victoria had learned to ignore their sneers when she spoke of second chances, but today their words stung differently because the man she had vouched for, the man she had promised the town council could be trusted despite his criminal past, had just ridden into town behind a marshal's wagon. Vincent Jameson sat with his wrists bound in iron shackles, his dark hair falling across a face that bore the marks of hard travel and harder living. Even from this distance, Victoria could see the cut above his eyebrow, the bruise darkening his jaw, the way his broad shoulders hunched forward under the weight of chains and condemnation. She had met him 3 months ago when he had stumbled into her father's mercantile, half-starved and desperate for honest work. Against everyone's advice, she had convinced her ailing father to hire him, had stood before the town council, and sworn that Vincent deserved a chance to prove himself. For 12 weeks he had worked from dawn until dusk, loading freight, repairing shelves, treating every customer with quiet respect. He had been rebuilding something inside himself. She had seen it in his eyes, in the careful way he handled even the smallest task as though it mattered. Now the marshal was dragging him back to face charges Victoria did not yet understand, and the entire town was watching her humiliation with satisfied eyes. She could hear Mortimer Crane's booming voice from inside the saloon, the banker who had opposed hiring Vincent from the start. That Sanders girl thought she could save him, thought her pretty words and innocent faith could wash away a man's true nature. Some people are born bad, and no amount of Christian charity changes that fact. The agreement rumbled through the establishment like thunder. Victoria felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she refused to look away as the marshal's wagon rolled past. Vincent's eyes found hers in that moment, and what she saw there was not the cold indifference of a hardened criminal, but something that made her breath catch in her throat. Pain, shame, and beneath it all, a desperate plea that she could not quite interpret. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but the marshal cracked the reins and the wagon lurched forward, carrying him toward the sheriff's office at the far end of town. She should walk away. Every rational thought in her head screamed that she should return to the mercantile, tend to her father, who grew weaker by the day, and accept that she had been wrong about Vincent Jameson. But Victoria Sanders had never been particularly good at listening to the rational voice in her head. Her mother had died believing people deserved compassion rather than judgment, and Victoria had inherited that stubborn faith, along with her mother's green eyes and honey-colored hair. The mercantile stood quiet when she pushed through the door, the bell above tinkling softly in the stillness. Her father sat in his usual chair behind the counter, his gray head bent over the account books he could no longer read properly. Thomas Sanders had built this business with his bare hands 40 years ago, had survived the wild optimism of the gold rush and the bitter disappointment that followed. Now, at 63, his body was failing him in ways that broke Victoria's heart daily. "The whole town is talking," he said without looking up. His voice carried the rasp of illness, the wet sound that meant his lungs were filling again. "They say Vincent robbed a stage 2 days ago, outside Sacramento." Victoria set her carpetbag on the counter with more force than necessary. "And you believe them?" Her father finally raised his eyes to meet hers. They were still sharp despite everything else that was failing. "I believe the marshal would not arrest him without cause. I believe we may have been deceived, daughter. He worked here for 3 months, Papa. You saw how hard he worked. You saw how he treated people." Victoria moved around the counter to kneel beside her father's chair, taking his weathered hands in hers. "Does that seem like a man who would throw it all away to rob a stage?" Thomas Sanders sighed, the sound rattling in his chest. "Men do foolish things, desperate things. We do not know what demons chase him." "Then I will find out." Victoria stood, already moving toward the door, with the determination that had gotten her into trouble more times than she could count. Her father called after her, but she was already stepping back into the street, her jaw set and her heart hammering against her ribs. The sheriff's office smelled of leather and tobacco smoke. Sheriff Dalton looked up from his desk as Victoria entered, his weathered face settling into lines of exasperation. He was a fair man generally, but he had little patience for what he called romantic notions about criminal reform. "Miss Sanders, I expected you would show up here eventually. I want to speak with Vincent." Victoria planted herself in front of his desk, refusing to be intimidated by his bulk or his authority. "I have a right to hear his side of the story." "You have no rights where a prisoner is concerned." Dalton leaned back in his chair, which creaked under his weight. "And before you start pleading his case, you should know the evidence is solid. 3 witnesses identified him as one of the men who held up the Sacramento stage. A woman's jewelry was found in his saddlebag." The words hit like physical blows, but Victoria held her ground. "That makes no sense. He has been here in Nevada City every single day for the past 3 months. When exactly did he have time to ride to Sacramento and back? The robbery was 2 days ago. He disappeared from town that morning, did he not? Your father told me Vincent did not show up for work, and no one saw him until the marshal brought him back." Victoria's mind raced. Vincent had indeed been absent, but there had to be an explanation. "Let me talk to him. Please, Sheriff, 5 minutes." Dalton studied her for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. "You are going to get your heart broken, girl, but I suppose you need to learn that lesson yourself." He stood, pulling a ring of keys from his belt. 5 minutes, I will be right outside the cell." The back room of the sheriff's office held 2 cells, both small and dark. Vincent sat on the narrow cot in the left cell, his head in his hands, the shackles removed but the weight of accusation still pressing down on him. He looked up as Victoria approached, and the raw emotion in his blue eyes almost made her stumble. "You should not be here," he said quietly. His voice was rough, deeper than she remembered, as though the past few days had aged him years. "Where else would I be?" Victoria wrapped her hands around the cold iron bars. "Tell me what happened, Vincent. Tell me the truth." He stood slowly, unfolding his tall frame until he towered over her, even with the bars between them. 6 feet of lean muscle and coiled tension, Vincent Jameson looked every inch the dangerous outlaw the town believed him to be. But Victoria had seen him cradle a broken bird in his calloused hands, had watched him help an elderly woman carry her purchases home in the rain, had noticed the way he left wildflowers on the graves in the cemetery on Sunday mornings when he thought no one was watching. The truth is complicated. He moved closer to the bars, close enough that she could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes, smell the dust and sweat on his skin. "And you would be wise to walk away from me right now. I do not want wisdom. I want the truth." Victoria refused to back down, even as her pulse quickened at his nearness. "Did you rob that stage?" "No." The word came out fierce, definite. "But I know who did, and that is almost as damning." "Explain that to me." Vincent ran a hand through his dark hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. "My brother, Garrett. We rode together for 3 years before I decided to get out of that life. I testified against the gang in exchange for a clean slate, helped put most of them behind bars. But Garrett escaped before the trial. I have been running from him ever since, trying to build something different, trying to be someone different. And he found you?" Understanding dawned like a cold sunrise. "He found me 3 days ago, came to the mercantile after closing, demanded I help him with one last job. When I refused, he said he would burn the store down, with your father inside. Said he would hurt you." Vincent's hands gripped the bars so tightly his knuckles went white. "So I rode out to meet him, to try to talk him down, to find some way to make him leave town without anyone getting hurt. By the time I realized he meant to frame me for the robbery, it was too late. He planted evidence in my saddlebag, made sure witnesses saw someone matching my description. He wants revenge for my betrayal, and he is willing to destroy everything I have tried to build to get it." The story sounded fantastical, like something from a dime novel. But Victoria found herself believing every word because she had learned to read truth in the 3 months Vincent had worked for her father. She had learned the difference between the careful distance he maintained with most people and the rare moments when his guard slipped, when she glimpsed the man beneath the protective armor. "Then we will prove your innocence." Victoria spoke with more confidence than she felt. "We will find your brother and clear your name." Vincent laughed, a bitter sound that held no humor. "You still believe in me? After everything, you still think I can be saved?" "I do not think you need saving, Vincent. I think you need someone to stand beside you while you save yourself." The words came from somewhere deep and true inside her. "And I know you need help catching a man who knows every trick you know." Victoria. Her name on his lips sounded like prayer and curse combined. "They will mock you even more than they already do. Mortimer Crane and his friends will make your life miserable. Let them." She reached through the bars, her small hand covering his larger one. The contact sent warmth racing up her arm. "I would rather be mocked for believing in second chances than praised for giving up on someone who deserves better." Something shifted in Vincent's eyes, some wall crumbling that had stood between them since the day they met. His hand turned under hers, his calloused fingers intertwining with hers in a grip that felt like a promise. "You are either the bravest woman I have ever met, or the most foolish. Perhaps both." Victoria managed a small smile despite the gravity of their situation. "Now tell me everything you know about your brother. Where would he go? What is his next move?" Sheriff Dalton's voice interrupted from the doorway. "Time is up, Miss Sanders. I need more information to help him, Sheriff." "Help him?" Dalton's bushy eyebrows shot up. "Girl, you are not a detective or a lawyer. You are a shopkeeper's daughter who has already been made a fool of once. Go home before you embarrass yourself further." The dismissal in his tone ignited something fierce in Victoria's chest. She had spent her entire life being underestimated, being patted on the head and told to leave important matters to men. Her mother had fought against the same dismissals, and Victoria had inherited more than just her faith in redemption. "Sheriff, with all due respect, I know Vincent better than anyone in this town. If there is a chance he is innocent, do you not have a responsibility to investigate that possibility? The evidence speaks for itself. The trial will be held as soon as Judge Morrison arrives next week. Until then, Jameson stays in that cell." Dalton's tone brooked no argument. "Now, unless you want me to escort you out, I suggest you leave voluntarily." Victoria squeezed Vincent's hand once more before releasing it. "This is not over," she told him quietly. "I will find a way to prove the truth." "Do not risk yourself for me," Vincent said urgently. "Garrett is dangerous, Victoria. If he thinks you are a threat to his plans, he will not hesitate to hurt you. Then I will be careful, but I will not abandon you." She held his gaze for another heartbeat before turning to leave, her mind already racing through possibilities. The evening had deepened into full darkness by the time Victoria stepped back onto the street. The saloon's laughter had grown louder with the consumption of alcohol, and she could see shadows moving behind the lit windows of houses where families gathered for supper. The normalcy of it all felt surreal against the urgency pounding through her veins. She needed information, and there was only one person in Nevada City who trafficked in gossip and rumor better than anyone else. Martha Henley ran the boarding house at the edge of town, a sprawling establishment that housed everyone from minors to traveling salesmen to the occasional questionable character. If anyone had seen a stranger matching Vincent's description in the days before the robbery, Martha would know about it. The boarding house glowed with lamplight and the smell of roasted chicken. Martha answered Victoria's knock herself, her round face creasing with surprise. "Victoria Sanders, what are you doing out at this hour? Your father needs you home, surely." "Papa is fine. I need to ask you about guests you may have had recently." Victoria stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her urgency overriding normal courtesy. "In the past week or so, did anyone new check in? Someone who looked like Vincent Jameson?" Martha's expression shifted from surprise to concern. "Oh, honey, you need to let that man go. The whole town knows he fooled you, and there is no shame in admitting you were wrong." "I was not wrong about him." Victoria fought to keep her voice steady. "Please, Martha, this is important. Did you see anyone?" The older woman studied Victoria's face for a long moment, then sighed. "There was a man, about 5 days ago. Rough-looking fellow, though he paid in advance and caused no trouble. Tall, dark-haired, had the same build as your Vincent but meaner around the eyes. He left 3 days ago, said he had business in Sacramento." Hope flared in Victoria's chest. "Is his room still available? Did he leave anything behind?" "Room's been cleaned and rented to someone else already, but now that you mention it, he did leave something odd in the wastebasket. I almost threw it out, but it seemed too fine for trash." Martha moved toward a small desk in the corner, rummaging through a drawer until she produced a leather cord threaded with unusual silver beads. "Foreign-looking thing. Never seen craftsmanship like that around here." Victoria took the cord carefully, examining the beads in the lamplight. They were distinctive, each one carved with intricate patterns that suggested skilled hands and significant value. "May I keep this? It might be important." "Take it, I have no use for it." Martha's expression softened. "Victoria, I know you have a good heart. Your mother was the same way, always seeing the best in people. But sometimes faith is not enough to change a person's nature. And sometimes faith is exactly what gives a person the strength to change." Victoria tucked the cord carefully into her pocket. "Thank you, Martha. You may have just helped save an innocent man." She left before Martha could argue further, her mind already planning her next move. The cord was evidence that someone else had been in town, someone who matched Vincent's description. But she needed more than that. She needed to find Garrett Jameson and get him to confess, or at least prove that Vincent was telling the truth about his brother's revenge plot. The problem was that Victoria Sanders had no experience tracking criminals, no knowledge of the violent world Vincent and his brother inhabited. What she did have was determination, intelligence, and a stubborn refusal to let an innocent man hang for crimes he did not commit. Her father was asleep when she returned to the mercantile, his breathing labored but steady. Victoria sat beside his bed for a while, watching his chest rise and fall, feeling the weight of responsibility press down on her shoulders. If something happened to her while she was chasing after Garrett Jameson, who would care for her father? Who would run the mercantile? But if she did nothing, Vincent would be convicted and likely hanged, and she would spend the rest of her life wondering if she could have saved him. That alternative seemed infinitely worse than any risk to herself. Morning came too slowly and too quickly at the same time. Victoria rose before dawn, dressed in her most practical clothing, and packed a small bag with supplies. She left a note for her father, explaining that she had to investigate something important and would return soon, though the words felt inadequate for what she was actually planning. The livery stable was just opening when she arrived. Old Carl, the stable master, gave her a puzzled look when she requested a horse and saddle. "Where are you planning to ride, Miss Sanders? That bag looks like you are going farther than a morning constitutional." "I have business in Sacramento. I will be back in a few days." The lie came easier than Victoria expected, though guilt immediately followed. She had never been good at deception. Carl scratched his grizzled chin. "Sacramento is 2 days' hard ride, and that is if you know the trail and do not run into trouble. You planning to make that journey alone?" "I am capable of managing, thank you." Victoria kept her voice firm, though her stomach churned with nervousness. She had ridden horses her entire life, but never alone and never for such a distance. Capable and wise are two different things. Carl began saddling a gentle mare named Rosie anyway, his movements practiced and efficient. "But I can see you have made up your mind, and the Sanders stubbornness is legendary in these parts. Take Rosie, she is steady and knows the trail, and take this." He handed her a small pistol from a locked cabinet. "You know how to use one of these?" Victoria nodded, though her only experience with firearms came from the few times her father had insisted she learn to shoot in case of emergencies. The weight of the gun in her hand felt both empowering and terrifying. "Keep it loaded but safety on, unless you need it. And Miss Sanders." Carl's weathered face creased with genuine concern. "Whatever you are doing, be smart about it. This country is not kind to lone women, no matter how brave they think they are." "I will be careful." "Thank you, Carl." Victoria secured her bag to the saddle and mounted Rosie, feeling the familiar comfort of horseback despite the unusual circumstances. The mare shifted beneath her, sensing her rider's nervous energy. The sun was just breaking over the Sierra Nevada peaks as Victoria rode out of Nevada City, the morning air cool and pine-scented. She had no clear plan beyond reaching Sacramento and trying to pick up Garrett Jameson's trail. It was foolish and dangerous, and exactly the kind of impulsive decision that had gotten her into trouble countless times before. But the memory of Vincent's eyes through the cell bars, the desperate hope mixed with resignation, drove her forward despite her fears. The trail to Sacramento wound through forests and across open valleys, past abandoned mining camps and the occasional small settlement. Victoria had traveled this route before with her father in their wagon, but never alone on horseback. Every snap of a twig, every rustle in the brush made her heart race. She kept the pistol within easy reach, though she prayed she would not need to use it. By midday, she had covered good distance and stopped to rest Rosie and eat some of the bread and cheese she had packed. The solitude felt heavy around her, broken only by birdsong and the whisper of wind through pine needles. For the first time, she allowed herself to fully consider what she was doing and why. She had told herself this was about justice, about proving Vincent's innocence and vindicating her faith in second chances. But sitting alone in the California wilderness, Victoria had to admit there was more to it than that. Over the 3 months Vincent had worked at the mercantile, something had grown between them. Nothing spoken, nothing acted upon, just a growing awareness of each other that had made her pulse quicken whenever he entered a room. She had noticed the way his rare smiles transformed his hard features, the gentle competence of his hands when he helped customers, the shadows that sometimes crossed his face when he thought no one was watching. She had fallen for him without meaning to, without even fully realizing it until the moment she saw him in chains. And now, riding through dangerous country toward an even more dangerous confrontation, she finally acknowledged the truth. She was not just fighting for justice or second chances. She was fighting for the man she loved, even if she had never told him so. The realization should have scared her. Instead, it felt like something clicking into place, a truth she had been avoiding finally brought into light. Whatever happened next, at least she would be honest with herself about her motivations. Victoria remounted Rosie and continued riding, pushing to cover as much distance as possible before nightfall. The landscape gradually shifted from dense forest to more open terrain as she descended from the higher elevations. By the time darkness forced her to stop, she had reached a small creek where she could water Rosie and make a cold camp. The idea of lighting a fire seemed too risky, too likely to draw attention she could not afford. She spent a restless night wrapped in her blanket beneath the stars, every sound making her reach for the pistol. But dawn came without incident, and she was back on the trail as soon as there was enough light to see. Her muscles ached from the long ride and uncomfortable sleep, but Victoria pushed through the discomfort with grim determination. Sacramento sprawled ahead of her by late afternoon of the second day, a bustling city that had survived the gold rush by transforming itself into a center of commerce and government. Victoria had visited a few times with her father to purchase wholesale goods, but she had never navigated its streets alone. The noise and crowds felt overwhelming after 2 days of solitude. She stabled Rosie at a reputable establishment and paid for several days' care, then stood on the busy street trying to decide her next move. She needed to find out where the stage robbery had occurred and see if she could learn anything about the actual perpetrators. The sheriff's office seemed like the logical place to start, though she would need to be careful about revealing too much. The Sacramento sheriff was a lean man named Collins with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. He listened to Victoria's carefully edited story about being interested in the stage robbery case with obvious skepticism. Why would a young woman from Nevada City care about a robbery investigation? Collins leaned back in his chair, studying her with the intensity of someone trained to spot lies. The man arrested for the crime worked for my father. I believe he may be innocent and thought I might gather information to help his case. Victoria kept her voice steady, meeting the sheriff's gaze directly. Lying by omission still felt dishonest, but she sensed full truth would get her nowhere. The Nevada City sheriff has all the relevant information. The case is solid, 3 witnesses identified the suspects, and evidence was recovered. Collins' tone suggested the matter was closed, and he had better things to do than entertain foolish questions. Could I speak to the witnesses, just to hear their accounts firsthand? Victoria pressed, unwilling to give up so easily. Absolutely not. I do not know what you think you are doing, miss, but interfering with an active case is not advisable. Go home before you get yourself into trouble. Collins stood, clearly dismissing her. Victoria left the office frustrated, but not defeated. If the official channels would not help her, she would have to find information another way. The stage robbery would have been big news in Sacramento. Someone, somewhere, would talk about it. She spent the rest of the afternoon visiting saloons and boarding houses, carefully asking questions and listening to gossip. Most people were willing to talk about the exciting robbery, especially when Victoria bought them drinks or presented herself as a concerned citizen. By evening, she had pieced together a clearer picture of what had happened. The stage had been attacked on the Sacramento to Placerville Road by 2 masked men. They had stolen a payroll shipment and jewelry from the passengers. One witness had gotten a good look at one of the robbers when his mask slipped, describing a tall, dark-haired man with a scar on his left hand. The other robber had been shorter and stockier, with a distinctive laugh that several witnesses remembered. Victoria felt excitement build as she gathered these details. The description matched what Vincent had told her about Garrett, including the scar. But more importantly, there had been 2 robbers. If she could prove Vincent had been in Nevada City when the robbery occurred, and if she could find evidence of a second man, she might be able to cast enough doubt on the charges to save him. The problem remained finding Garrett Jameson. Victoria had no idea where to look for a professional outlaw in a city the size of Sacramento. She spent a second night in a modest boarding house, her funds dwindling and her frustration growing. She had come all this way but seemed no closer to actual proof of Vincent's innocence. Morning brought unexpected help in the form of a young boy who approached Victoria as she left the boarding house. He could not have been more than 10 years old, wearing clothes that had seen better days and a cap pulled low over his eyes. "You, the lady asking questions about the stage robbery?" The boy's voice was cautious, ready to bolt at the first sign of trouble. "I am." Victoria knelt to put herself at his eye level, trying to appear non-threatening. "Do you know something about it?" "Maybe. What is it worth to you?" The boy's entrepreneurial spirit reminded Victoria of the countless children in Nevada City who had learned to survive through wit and opportunism. She pulled a silver dollar from her pocket, holding it up where he could see but not reach. "It is worth this if your information is useful." The boy eyed the coin with obvious longing. "I saw those men before the robbery. They were staying in a shack near the river, planning something. I sneak around there sometimes looking for things to sell, and I heard them talking about hitting a stage. One of them kept laughing. This weird, high-pitched sound gave me the shivers. Could you show me where this shack is?" Victoria's pulse quickened with renewed hope. "Lady, those are dangerous men. They would kill me if they knew I talked." The boy shook his head emphatically. "They are gone now, are they not? After the robbery." Victoria kept her voice gentle, persuasive. "I just want to look at the place. Maybe they left something behind that could help prove an innocent man did not commit their crime." The boy considered this for a long moment, then held out his hand. "Dollar now, and another one when I show you the place." Victoria should have negotiated, should have been more careful with her limited funds. Instead, she handed over the coin and another from her rapidly depleting stash. "Show me." The shack was exactly as described, a ramshackle structure near the Sacramento River that looked like it might collapse in a strong wind. The boy led Victoria there through back streets and alleys, clearly familiar with the less reputable parts of the city. He pointed out the building from a safe distance and then disappeared like smoke, leaving Victoria alone to investigate. The shack's door hung crooked on its hinges. Victoria pushed it open carefully, her hand on the pistol in her pocket. The interior was dim and smelled of whiskey and unwashed bodies. Someone had definitely been living here recently, evidenced by the blankets on the floor and empty bottles scattered about. She searched carefully, not sure what she was looking for, but hoping she would recognize it when she found it. In a corner, partially hidden under a torn blanket, she discovered a leather satchel. Her hands trembled as she opened it, revealing a bundle of papers and a few personal items. The papers appeared to be correspondence, letters addressed to Garrett Jameson at various locations. Victoria's heart raced as she scanned the contents. They painted a picture of a man constantly on the move, staying one step ahead of the law, nursing a bitter grudge against his brother who had betrayed the gang. One letter in particular, from someone named Dutch, explicitly discussed plans to frame Vincent for a crime and mentioned the Sacramento stage as a potential target. Victoria wanted to shout with relief. This was the evidence she needed, proof that Garrett had been planning to frame his brother. She carefully folded the letters and placed them in her own bag, then continued searching. She found the silver beads matching the ones Martha had given her, clearly part of a set. And at the bottom of the satchel, she found a photograph. 2 men stood side by side in the faded image, so similar they had to be brothers, both tall and dark-haired, both with the hard edges of difficult lives. But their eyes told different stories. The man on the left, who she recognized as Vincent from his features, looked younger in the photo but already carried shadows. The man on the right, presumably Garrett, had a cruel twist to his mouth and cold eyes even the old photograph could not soften. Victoria studied the image, trying to understand what had taken these 2 brothers down such different paths. Vincent had chosen to walk away from crime, to testify against his former associates, to try to build something better. Garrett had chosen revenge and violence, willing to destroy his own brother rather than let go of his anger. She was so absorbed in examining the photograph that she did not hear the footsteps outside until it was too late. The door crashed open, slamming against the wall with a sound like a gunshot. Victoria spun around, her hand diving for the pistol, but froze when she saw the man filling the doorway. He looked exactly like Vincent, the same height and build and dark hair. But Martha had been right. He was meaner around the eyes, his features twisted with anger and something that might have been madness. Garrett Jameson had returned to his hideout, and Victoria had just walked into a trap of her own making. Well, Garrett's voice was like broken glass, sharp and dangerous. Let me guess, you are the little shop girl who thinks she can save my brother. Victoria's fingers closed around the pistol grip, but Garrett moved faster than she expected. He crossed the small space in 2 strides and grabbed her wrist, twisting until she gasped and dropped the gun. His other hand closed around her throat, not squeezing hard enough to choke, but making the threat clear. Vincent always did have a weakness for pretty faces and redemption stories. Garrett's breath smelled of whiskey. Did he tell you about me? Did he explain how he betrayed his own blood to save his worthless hide? He told me he testified against criminals. That is not betrayal. That is doing the right thing. Victoria forced the words out despite the pressure on her throat, refusing to show the terror coursing through her. Garrett laughed, that same high-pitched sound the boy had described. The right thing. You sound just like him, all noble and reformed. Let me tell you what your precious Vincent did not mention. He cut a deal to save himself while the rest of us rotted in prison. 3 men died behind bars because of his testimony, including our cousin. But Vincent got his fresh start, got to pretend he was something better than what he really is. People can change. People deserve second chances. Victoria met Garrett's cold eyes directly, even as fear made her knees weak. Is that what you tell yourself when you look at him? That you can love a murderer clean? Garrett's laugh turned darker. Oh, yes, I know he has not told you everything. Vincent has killed people, sweetheart. Not in self-defense, not by accident. We did things that would make you sick if you knew the details. Then he has even more reason to change, to be better than he was. Victoria spoke the words with absolute conviction, even as part of her recoiled from the images Garrett's words conjured. Whatever he did before, he is trying to make amends now, and you are trying to destroy him for it. Garrett's hand tightened fractionally on her throat. I am trying to show him what happens when you turn your back on family, and you, little girl, are going to help me finish the job. I will not help you hurt him. Victoria tried to pull away, but Garrett's grip was iron. You already have. You think it is coincidence I came back here right now? I have been watching you since you rode into Sacramento asking your questions. I knew you would lead me right back to evidence I needed to clean up. And now, you are going to write a letter to my dear brother, telling him you have found proof of his crimes. When he escapes to come find you, which he will because he is predictable that way, he will be a fugitive. They will hunt him down like a dog, and everything he has tried to build will burn. Vincent would never escape. He wants to clear his name legally. But even as Victoria spoke, doubt crept in. She remembered the desperate look in Vincent's eyes, the way he had told her not to risk herself. Would he really stay in that cell if he believed she was in danger? Then I will just kill you and make sure he knows it was his fault. Garrett said it casually, as if discussing the weather. Either way, he loses everything, just like I did. Fear turned to anger in Victoria's chest, hot and fierce. She had not ridden 2 days through dangerous country, had not risked everything she had to let this bitter, violent man win. She brought her knee up hard, aiming for Garrett's groin with all the force she could muster. Her aim was not perfect, but it was good enough. Garrett's grip loosened as he doubled over with a grunt of pain. Victoria shoved past him, diving for the pistol she had dropped. Her fingers closed around the grip, and she spun back around, thumbing off the safety the way Carl had shown her. Do not move. Her voice shook, but the gun did not. She had never pointed a weapon at another human being before, never imagined she would need to, but in this moment, she knew she would pull the trigger if necessary. Garrett straightened slowly, one hand pressed to his stomach, fury and grudging respect warring in his expression. You have more spine than I expected, but you will not shoot me, sweetheart. You are one of those believers, remember? Second chances and redemption for everyone. Second chances are for people who want to change. You just want revenge and violence." Victoria kept the gun trained on his chest, her finger resting beside the trigger. "Stay where you are while I leave, or I promise you will discover I can shoot when I need to." For a long moment, they stood frozen in tableau, predator and prey reversed. Then Garrett moved, faster than Victoria anticipated, his hand going for a knife at his belt. She squeezed the trigger instinctively, the gunshot deafening in the small space. The bullet caught Garrett in the shoulder, spinning him around. He crashed against the wall with a roar of pain and rage. Victoria did not wait to see how badly he was hurt. She grabbed her bag and ran, leaving the shack and plunging into the warren of streets beyond, her heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She had just shot a man. The reality of it threatened to overwhelm her, but she forced herself to keep moving, to put distance between herself and Garrett Jameson. Behind her, she could hear him shouting, cursing, promising violence if he caught her. Victoria ran until her lungs burned and her legs threatened to give out. She finally stopped in a crowded marketplace, pressing herself against a building, while she tried to catch her breath and think clearly. She still had the letters, still had the evidence that could save Vincent. But Garrett was wounded and angry, and he knew she was in Sacramento. She needed to get back to Nevada City immediately, needed to get the evidence to Sheriff Dalton before Garrett could stop her. The stable was only a few blocks away. Victoria forced herself to walk normally, despite every instinct screaming at her to run. She collected Rosie, her hands shaking as she saddled the mare, and secured her bag. The stablemaster gave her an odd look, probably noticing her disheveled appearance and the wild fear in her eyes. But he said nothing as she led Rosie into the street and mounted up. The ride back to Nevada City was a blur of terror and determination. Victoria pushed Rosie harder than she should have, knowing every moment of delay gave Garrett more time to come after her. Her shoulder ached from the gun's recoil, and her hands would not stop shaking. She had shot another human being. The thoughts circled endlessly in her mind, mixing horror with grim necessity. But she could not afford to fall apart, not yet. Vincent's life depended on her getting this evidence to the authorities. Her own life probably depended on staying ahead of Garrett, wounded or not. She rode through the afternoon and into the evening, stopping only when it became too dark to safely continue. That night, camped in a small clearing off the main trail, Victoria finally let herself cry. The violence and fear of the day overwhelmed her carefully maintained composure, and she sobbed into her blanket until she was empty. But with the tears came a strange sense of clarity. She had faced real danger and survived. She had found the evidence Vincent needed and protected it. Whatever happened next, she had proven to herself that her faith was not weakness. She had the strength to fight for what she believed in, even when that fight turned ugly. Dawn found her back on the trail, exhausted but grimly determined. She reached Nevada City by mid-afternoon of the third day, riding directly to the sheriff's office without stopping at the Mercantile first. Sheriff Dalton looked up in surprise as she burst through the door, dusty and disheveled and clutching her bag like a lifeline. "Miss Sanders? Where have you been? Your father has been worried sick." "I have evidence." Victoria dumped the letters on his desk with shaking hands. Proof that Vincent Jameson is innocent, that his brother Garrett framed him for the robbery. It is all here. Letters discussing the plan, evidence connecting Garrett to the crime scene. You have to read it. Dalton's expression shifted from surprise to disapproval. "You went to Sacramento alone? Good Lord, girl. Do you have any idea how dangerous that was?" "Of course I do. I also know an innocent man is sitting in your jail while the real criminal plans his next move." Victoria pointed at the letters with a trembling finger. "Read them, please." The sheriff sighed but picked up the papers, scanning them with growing interest. His bushy eyebrows drew together as he read, occasionally glancing up at Victoria with something that might have been grudging respect. "Oh, this is detailed planning for a frame job," he admitted. "And if this Dutch character testifies, it could corroborate Vincent's story. But obtaining evidence this way, breaking into private property, stealing documents, that complicates matters legally. I did not break in. The door was open, and I took evidence of a crime, which seemed more important than property concerns." Victoria crossed her arms, refusing to be cowed. "Will this help Vincent or not?" "It might. Combined with witness testimony about 2 robbers and the timeline issues I have been noticing in the case, this could be enough to create reasonable doubt." Dalton set the letters down carefully. I will need to contact the Sacramento sheriff, verify these documents, and try to locate this Garrett Jameson for questioning. He is probably on his way here." The words came out flat, exhausted. "I shot him in Sacramento. He is wounded but still dangerous. And he wants revenge against Vincent and probably me now too." The sheriff's face went through several expressions in rapid succession, landing on something between alarm and exasperation. "You shot him?" "He attacked me. I defended myself." Victoria met Dalton's eyes steadily. "If you want to arrest me for that, go ahead. But first, please tell Vincent what I found. He deserves to know there is hope." Sheriff Dalton studied her for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. "You are either the bravest or most foolish woman I have ever encountered, and I genuinely cannot decide which. Wait here." He disappeared into the back room where the cells were kept. Victoria sank into a chair, suddenly aware of how completely exhausted she was. 3 days of hard riding, minimal sleep, and constant fear had drained her to the core. But beneath the exhaustion was a profound sense of accomplishment. She had done it. She had found the evidence and brought it back. Vincent had a real chance now. The sheriff returned a few minutes later with Vincent behind him, still in restraints, but with an expression of such naked relief and terror that Victoria's breath caught. Vincent crossed the room in 3 long strides and dropped to his knees in front of her chair, his manacled hands reaching for hers. "You beautiful, reckless fool." His voice was rough with emotion. "You could have been killed. You should never have gone after him. Someone had to." Victoria's fingers intertwined with his, both of them gripping too tightly but neither willing to let go. "And everyone else had already given up on you." "I have not given up on him." Sheriff Dalton's gruff voice interrupted the moment. "But I do need to keep him in custody until we sort this out legally. Miss Sanders, you need to go home and rest, and both of you need to prepare for the possibility that Garrett will come here looking to finish what he started. He will." Vincent's eyes had gone hard, dangerous in a way Victoria had never seen before. "Garrett does not know how to quit. If he is wounded and angry, he will want blood. Mine, Victoria's, anyone who gets in his way. Then we will be ready for him." Dalton's hand moved unconsciously to the gun at his belt. "But first, I need to telegraph Sacramento and start building a proper case. Vincent, back to your cell. Miss Sanders, go see your father before he has a heart attack from worry." Victoria wanted to protest, wanted to stay near Vincent now that they were finally in the same room again. But exhaustion was pulling at her, making her thoughts fuzzy. She nodded slowly and stood, reluctantly releasing Vincent's hands. "Victoria." Vincent stood as well, towering over her, his eyes full of things he could not say with the sheriff watching. "Thank you for believing in me, for risking everything to prove the truth. I would do it again." She meant it with her entire heart. "You are worth believing in, Vincent Jameson." The walk back to the Mercantile felt endless. Victoria's legs shook with each step, her body finally recognizing how much she had demanded of it over the past 3 days. The town was settling into evening, lamps being lit in windows and families gathering for supper. She wondered how many of them knew about her desperate ride to Sacramento. How many were even now gossiping about the foolish Sanders girl who had made herself an even bigger laughingstock? Her father was waiting in the doorway, his weathered face creased with worry and relief. "Victoria. Thank God. Martha Henley told me you had gone to Sacramento alone, and I have been half out of my mind imagining terrible things. I am sorry I worried you, Papa." Victoria let him pull her into an embrace, feeling the tremor in his arms that spoke of illness and fear. "But I found evidence that proves Vincent is innocent, real evidence that the sheriff is going to investigate." Thomas Sanders held her at arm's length, studying her face. "You did something dangerous, something that put you at risk. I can see it in your eyes." There was no point lying to him. Victoria had never been good at it anyway. "Vincent's brother attacked me. I defended myself. But I am fine, Papa, truly." Her father's face went pale. "Attacked you? How? Are you hurt?" "Just bruises. Nothing serious." She did not mention shooting Garrett, could not bear to see what that revelation would do to her father's already fragile health. "But we need to be careful. The brother might come here looking for revenge. Then you will stay inside until the law sorts this out. I will not lose you to someone else's violence, Victoria. Your mother would never forgive me." Thomas's voice cracked on the last words, and Victoria realized how terrified he had truly been. "I will be careful, I promise." She squeezed his hand gently. "But Papa, I need you to understand something. I love Vincent Jameson. I know the whole town thinks I am a fool. I know you have doubts, but my heart is certain. He is a good man trying to overcome his past, and I will not abandon him." Her father was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching hers. Finally, he sighed deeply. "Your mother said the same thing about me once. I was nothing when we met, a failed prospector with more debts than prospects. But she believed I could be something better, and her faith gave me the strength to become the man she deserved. If you see that same potential in Vincent Jameson, then perhaps you inherited your mother's gift for seeing what others miss." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. "You are not angry? I am terrified for you, but I'm also proud of your courage, even if it frightens me." Thomas pulled her close again. "Now, please go rest before you collapse. Everything else can wait until you have slept." Sleep was a beautiful, necessary oblivion. Victoria barely remembered climbing the stairs to her small bedroom above the mercantile before exhaustion claimed her completely. She slept through the evening and night and well into the next morning, her body demanding the rest she had denied it. When she finally woke, sunlight was streaming through her window, and she could hear voices downstairs in the shop. Her muscles ached, and her shoulder was bruised from the pistol's recoil, but she felt more clear-headed than she had in days. She dressed quickly and descended the stairs to find her father deep in conversation with Sheriff Dalton. Both men looked up as she entered, and the sheriff's expression was unreadable. Victoria's stomach clenched with sudden fear. "What has happened? Is Vincent all right?" "Vincent is fine. Better than fine, actually." Dalton pulled a telegram from his pocket. "I heard back from Sacramento. The sheriff there is taking your evidence seriously. They found the shack where Garrett was staying and confirmed the physical evidence matches your description. More importantly, they located one of the actual robbery witnesses who, when shown separate photographs of Vincent and Garrett, identified Garrett as the man he saw. The other robber has been identified as a known associate of Garrett's. The case against Vincent is falling apart." Relief made Victoria's knees weak. She grabbed the counter for support, hardly daring to believe it. "Then he will be released?" "Not immediately. There are legal processes that have to be followed, paperwork that needs to be filed. But Judge Morrison arrived this morning, and I have already briefed him on the new evidence. He is inclined to dismiss the charges, possibly as soon as tomorrow." Dalton's stern expression softened slightly. "You did good work, Miss Sanders. Reckless, dangerous work that I cannot officially condone, but good work nonetheless." "What about Garrett? Have they found him?" Victoria already knew the answer from the sheriff's troubled expression. "No. He disappeared from Sacramento shortly after the shooting. Could be anywhere by now, possibly wounded badly enough that he is dead in a ditch somewhere, or possibly on his way here for revenge. We cannot know for sure." Dalton shifted uncomfortably. "Which brings me to the unpleasant part of my visit. I need you to stay where we can protect you until we know for certain Garrett Jameson is no longer a threat. That means staying in town, preferably staying inside as much as possible." The idea of hiding made Victoria's independent spirit rebel, but she saw the logic in it. "I understand, but I want to see Vincent today. If he might be released tomorrow, I want to speak with him before that happens." "I will escort you to the jail myself," Dalton agreed. "But we go armed and we stay alert. Garrett could be watching even now." The sheriff was as good as his word, accompanying Victoria to the jail, with his hand never far from his gun. The streets of Nevada City looked the same as always, but Victoria found herself seeing potential threats in every shadow, every stranger's face. It was an unsettling way to view the town she had called home her entire life. Vincent was standing at the cell bars when they arrived, as if he had been waiting. His eyes locked on Victoria immediately, and the intensity in that gaze made her heart race. Sheriff Dalton cleared his throat awkwardly. "I will give you two some privacy, but I will be right outside. You have 15 minutes. When they were alone, Vincent reached through the bars to cup Victoria's face in his large, calloused hands. The tenderness of the gesture contrasted sharply with the intensity in his eyes. "I spent all night terrified that Garrett had caught up to you, that I would hear you had been hurt or worse because you tried to save me." His thumb traced her cheekbone gently. "You should not have done what you did. It was reckless and dangerous and could have gotten you killed. Then it is fortunate I am too stubborn to die easily." Victoria covered his hands with hers, leaning into his touch. "The sheriff says the charges will likely be dismissed tomorrow. You are going to be free, Vincent." "Free." He said the word as if testing its weight. "I have been running for so long, trying to outpace my past, that I am not sure I remember what freedom feels like." "Then we will figure it out together." The words were out before Victoria could second-guess them, bold and honest. "If you want to, that is. If you want to stay in Nevada City and keep working at the Mercantile, and maybe, eventually, build something more between us." Vincent's eyes widened, as vulnerability and hope warring in his expression. "You would want that? After everything you know about me now? Garrett told you things, I know he did, about the things I did before I decided to change. He told me you killed people, that you did terrible things." Victoria held his gaze steadily. "And I believe him, but I also believe people can change, can be better than their worst moments. You have proven that every single day for the past 3 months. You have shown me who you are now, and that is the man I see. That is the man I love." The last words hung in the air between them, huge and terrifying and undeniably true. Vincent's breath caught, his hands tightening fractionally on her face. "Say that again," he whispered. "I love you." Victoria's voice was stronger this time, certain. "I love the man who leaves flowers on strangers' graves. I love the man who works harder than anyone I have ever met. I love the man who tried to protect me even when it meant facing his worst nightmares. I love you, Vincent Jameson, and I believe in the man you are trying to become." Vincent made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob, and then he was pulling her closer, pressing his forehead against hers through the bars. "I have loved you since the moment you stood up to the town council and defended me when you had every reason not to. You looked at me and saw possibility instead of condemnation, and it made me want to be the man you believed I could be." "You already are that man." Victoria's hands moved to grip the bars alongside his, their fingers intertwining. "You just needed someone to believe in you, long enough for you to believe in yourself. I want to kiss you." Vincent's voice was raw with longing. "I want to hold you properly, not separated by iron bars. I want to court you the right way, with flowers and Sunday dinners and proper declarations. I want to marry you, if you will have a reformed outlaw with more regrets than prospects. I will have you." Victoria smiled through the tears threatening to spill. "Regrets and all, reformed outlaw and all. I will have all of you, Vincent, for as long as you will let me." They stayed like that, foreheads pressed together and hands entwined through the bars, until Sheriff Dalton cleared his throat from the doorway to announce time was up. Victoria pulled away reluctantly, already missing the warmth of Vincent's touch. "Tomorrow," Vincent said, his eyes promising everything words could not convey. "Tomorrow I will be free, and we will start building the life we both deserve." Victoria nodded, not trusting her voice, and let the sheriff escort her back into the Nevada City evening. The town looked different now, full of possibility instead of judgment. Let them mock her faith in second chances. She had been proven right in the way that mattered most. That night, Victoria helped her father close up the Mercantile and prepare for the next day. Thomas moved slowly, his illness progressing in ways that hurt Victoria's heart to witness. But he smiled at her with genuine warmth as they worked side by side. "Your Vincent will need employment when he is released," Thomas said carefully. "The Mercantile could use a strong back and honest worker. If he is interested in staying on, I would be glad to keep him." "Thank you, Papa." Victoria hugged her father gently, mindful of his fragility. "That means more than you know. Your mother would have liked him, I think. She always had a soft spot for hard men trying to find their way to gentleness." Thomas's eyes grew distant with memory. "She saw that in me once, and it changed everything." They were locking the front door when the sound of breaking glass shattered the peaceful evening. Victoria spun around to see flames licking up the side wall of the Mercantile, fed by kerosene that had been thrown through the broken window. Her father gasped, already moving toward the fire with the desperate instinct to save his life's work. "Papa, no!" Victoria grabbed his arm, pulling him back toward the door. The fire was spreading too quickly, already consuming the dry wood of the building's interior. They had minutes at most to get out safely, More glass broke, this time from the back of the building. Someone was ensuring the fire caught properly, making certain the mercantile would burn completely. And Victoria knew with terrible certainty who that someone was. Garrett Jameson stepped out of the shadows across the street, his left arm in a crude sling and his face twisted with rage. Even wounded, he radiated violence and cruel satisfaction. "Come on out, shopkeeper's daughter. Time to pay for what you did." Victoria pushed her father toward the side door. "Get to the sheriff's office. Tell Dalton that Garrett is here. Go now, Papa. Please. I will not leave you." But Thomas was already coughing from the smoke beginning to fill the building, his weakened lungs unable to handle the assault. "You have to. I need you to get help." Victoria practically shoved her father through the door, watching long enough to see him stumbling down the alley toward safety, before she turned to face Garrett. The front of the mercantile was fully engulfed now, flames climbing toward the living quarters upstairs, where all of Victoria's memories lived. Rage joined the fear in her chest. This man had tried to destroy Vincent, had attacked her in Sacramento, and now he was burning down everything her father had spent a lifetime building. She grabbed the pistol Carl had given her, checked that it was loaded, and stepped out into the street to face Garrett Jameson. The fire cast dancing shadows across his cruel features, making him look demonic in the flickering light. "Brave girl coming out to face me." Garrett's good hand rested on his own gun. Or maybe just stupid. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. "You are hurt and outnumbered. The sheriff will be here any moment, and this time you will hang for attempted murder and arson." Victoria kept her voice steady despite the fear making her hands shake. "You can still walk away, Garrett. You can disappear and start over somewhere else. This does not have to end with more violence." Garrett laughed that high, unsettling laugh she remembered from the shack. "Listen to you, still preaching redemption even now. You really do believe in second chances, do not you? Even for a man who just burned down your home and threatened your life. Second chances are for people who want to change. You have made it clear you do not." Victoria raised the pistol, aiming at his chest. "So, I am giving you one chance to leave before I put another bullet in you. You will not shoot. You are one of the good ones. Remember? You probably cried for days after shooting me in Sacramento." But despite his words, Garrett's eyes flickered with uncertainty. "Try me." Victoria's finger moved to the trigger. "You have 5 seconds to start walking." She never got to find out if Garrett would have called her bluff. Vincent's voice rang out from somewhere behind her, hard and commanding. "Step away from her, Garrett. This is between you and me. It always has been." Victoria's heart stopped. She turned to see Vincent running toward them from the direction of the sheriff's office, his hands free of shackles and a rifle in his grip. Behind him came Sheriff Dalton and 2 deputies, all armed. But Vincent was ahead of them all, focused entirely on his brother with an intensity that was almost frightening. "Vincent!" Garrett's face contorted with fresh rage. "They let you out? Of course they did. You always did know how to charm your way past justice." "I did not charm anyone. Victoria proved my innocence because she has more courage and integrity than men twice her age." Vincent positioned himself between his brother and Victoria, the rifle aimed steady at Garrett's heart. "This ends now. One way or another, brother. This ends tonight." "You gonna shoot me? Your own blood?" Garrett's laugh was bitter. "That would complete your transformation into the righteous man, would it not? Kill your brother to protect the pretty girl. Very heroic. I do not want to shoot you. I want you to surrender, to face justice, maybe even to find some kind of peace in prison." Vincent's voice carried a world of pain. "But I will shoot you if you force my hand. I will not let you hurt Victoria or anyone else in this town. Those days are over." For a long moment, the brothers stared at each other across the flame-lit street, 2 sides of the same coin, 2 paths diverging from the same starting point. Victoria could see the history between them, the shared childhood and choices that had led them to this confrontation. Then Garrett's hand moved toward his gun, and everything happened at once. Vincent fired first, the rifle shot echoing through the night. Garrett spun backward, his own gun clearing its holster, but the shot going wide as he fell. Sheriff Dalton and his deputies rushed forward, securing Garrett's weapon and checking his wound. Vincent lowered the rifle slowly, his face pale and stricken. Victoria ran to him, wrapping her arms around his waist and holding tight. She felt him trembling, felt the gun slip from his fingers as he clutched her in return. "I did not want it to end this way," he whispered against her hair. "He was my brother. Whatever else he became, he was my brother once. I know. I am so sorry, Vincent." Victoria held him while the sheriff's men worked, while the townspeople formed a bucket brigade to fight the fire consuming the mercantile, while the night unfolded in chaos and consequence around them. Garrett Jameson survived the gunshot, though he would bear its mark for the rest of his life. He was taken to Sacramento to face charges for the stage robbery, the attack on Victoria, and the arson. The trial was swift, the evidence overwhelming. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison, and Vincent attended every day of the proceedings, watching his brother's final descent with sorrow in his eyes. The mercantile could not be saved. By the time the fire was extinguished, only the shell of the building remained. All of Thomas Sanders' life work reduced to ash and charred timber. It should have been devastating, a loss that crushed their spirits. Instead, it became an unexpected catalyst for change. The town's response surprised everyone, Victoria most of all. People she had thought would gloat over her misfortune instead showed up with supplies and labor. Even Mortimer Crane, who had mocked her belief in second chances, donated lumber and funds toward rebuilding. Apparently, watching a young woman risk her life to prove an innocent man's innocence had shifted something in the collective conscience of Nevada City. "We judged you harshly," Martha Henley told Victoria one afternoon as they sorted through what could be salvaged from the mercantile's ruins. "You were right about that young man, and we were wrong. The least we can do is help you rebuild what was lost." Vincent threw himself into the reconstruction with fierce determination, working alongside the men who had once viewed him with suspicion. His skill with carpentry and construction quickly became apparent, and slowly, grudgingly, the town began to accept him as one of their own. It helped that he never spoke badly of his brother, never tried to paint himself as a pure victim. He acknowledged his past mistakes with quiet honesty, and let his current actions speak for his character. Thomas Sanders' health continued to decline through the autumn months of 1872. He lived long enough to see the new mercantile rising from the ashes of the old, the structure stronger and more modern than what had been lost. On a crisp October morning, with gold leaves falling outside his window and his daughter holding his hand, Thomas passed peacefully in his sleep. Victoria grieved deeply, but not without comfort. Vincent stood beside her through the funeral and the painful weeks that followed, steady and strong and exactly what she needed. They had not formalized their courtship yet, too focused on survival and rebuilding, but everyone in town knew they belonged together. It was just a matter of time. That time came on Christmas Eve, when the new mercantile stood complete and decorated with pine boughs and candles. Vincent found Victoria arranging the window display, her hands busy but her eyes distant with thought. He took the bolt of fabric from her hands and set it aside, then dropped to one knee right there among the nails and lumber scraps. "Victoria Sanders, you saved my life in every way a person can be saved. You believed in me when no one else did. You fought for me when it would have been easier to walk away, and you loved me despite every reason not to." Vincent pulled a simple gold ring from his pocket, the band engraved with tiny flowers. "I do not have much to offer beyond hard work and honest devotion, but if you will have me, I promise to spend every day proving your faith in second chances was not misplaced." Victoria dropped to her knees as well, framing Vincent's face in her hands. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes. You already prove it every single day, Vincent. Every single day you show me what love and redemption look like." They were married on New Year's Day, 1873, in a simple ceremony at the Nevada City Church. The town turned out in surprising numbers, bearing witness to the union of the woman who believed in second chances and the man who had fought to deserve one. Sheriff Dalton stood as Vincent's best man, a gesture that spoke volumes about how completely Vincent had been accepted into the community. Martha Henley stood with Victoria, dabbing at her eyes throughout the ceremony. The years that followed were not without challenges, but they were good years. Victoria and Vincent ran the mercantile together, building it into the most successful business in Nevada City. Vincent's skill with carpentry became legendary, and he took on apprentices, teaching young men the trade while also teaching them by example that past mistakes need not define a person's future. Their first child, a son they named Thomas Vincent Jameson, was born in the autumn of 1874. He had his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes and a smile that could light up a room. 2 years later, a daughter arrived, Elizabeth Rose, fierce and independent from her first breath. On quiet evenings, Victoria would sometimes think back to that day when she had stood on the street listening to the Silver Spur Saloon mock her belief in second chances. She thought about how close she had come to giving up, to accepting that Vincent was guilty and her faith had been misplaced. The fact that she had refused to surrender that faith, had fought for it with everything she had led to this life full of love and purpose and daily proof that people could change. Vincent proved her right every single day, not through grand gestures or dramatic transformations, but through the steady accumulation of small moments. The way he treated every customer with respect, the care he took with his work, the gentleness with which he raised their children, teaching them about mistakes and redemption through his own example. The love he showed Victoria in 1,000 quiet ways, from the coffee he made her each morning to the flowers he still left on her mother's grave every Sunday. "Do you ever regret it?" Vincent asked her one evening as they sat on the porch of their home watching their children play in the yard. "Taking a chance on a man with a criminal past? Fighting so hard for someone everyone said was not worth saving?" Victoria leaned against his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of sawdust and soap that meant home. "Not for one single moment. You were always worth saving, Vincent. You just needed someone to believe it until you could believe it yourself. You made me want to be better." Vincent's arm came around her shoulders, pulling her close. "Every day I wake up grateful that you saw something in me worth fighting for. And every day I wake up grateful that you proved me right." Victoria smiled up at him. The cowboy who showed the whole town that second chances are not just possible, but necessary. That people can change if they truly want to. You proved it every single day, and you are still proving it. Thomas came running up to the porch then, breathless with excitement about something he had found in the garden. Elizabeth followed close behind, determined not to be left out of any adventure. Vincent scooped them both up, one in each arm, his laughter rich and genuine. Victoria watched the three of them together and felt her heart swell with a joy so complete it was almost painful. This was what they had fought for, this life built on faith and hard work and the stubborn refusal to accept that people were beyond redemption. This family created from second chances and the courage to believe in the possibility of change. This love that had survived violence and doubt and public mockery to become something stronger than steel. Years later, when Victoria was an old woman with grandchildren climbing on her knees, people would still talk about the girl who had believed in second chances when no one else did. They would tell the story of how she had ridden alone to Sacramento, faced down a dangerous criminal, and brought back the evidence that saved an innocent man. They would speak of the love that had grown between her and Vincent Jameson, a love that had transformed not just 2 lives, but an entire community's understanding of redemption. But Victoria would always remember it more simply. She had seen a man trying to be better than his past. She had believed in him when belief was a radical act, and he had proven her right every single day, in ways both large and small, for the rest of their lives together. The mercantile passed down through their children and grandchildren, remaining a cornerstone of Nevada City for generations. And above the door, carved into the wood by Vincent's own hands, remained the words he had placed there on the day they reopened. "Everyone deserves a second chance." It was more than a motto. It was a promise, a philosophy, a way of life. And in the end, it was the truth that had set them both free.